guys, it's Gordy and welcome back to my channel. So today is gonna finally be the final part of the making of my Sapphire Gems cosplay. Now, as you can probably tell by the setup, this is gonna be a little different from the other vlogs that I've done because, try as I might, Con Crunch hit me like on a wrecking ball and I didn't really get to film a lot of progress. Don't get me wrong, I do have some footage around and I will try to sprinkle that throughout this video as much as I can. But yeah, the majority of this was done in a hurry, so as a result I wasn't really able to film a lot of things properly. So I'm just going to be doing this in kind of a breakdown version instead. So with that being said, let's get started. Here is how I made my Sapphire Gems vest and cape from Sakizou. Okay, so the first thing I did in regards to making this vest is of course to create a pattern. Now I actually used the exact same pattern that I used for the other two vests that I've already created, which I will put a card here so you can go check out those vlogs if you want to go see it. But basically I just modified it a little bit further than the other two. The reason why I like using the same base pattern for all the vests is because I kind of have an idea of how they're going to fit, so it'll be more logical that they'll be able to lay over each other really nicely. Of course, this pattern did not go without some modifications. The first and most obvious thing is that I had to make it a hell of a lot longer. So that was the first thing I did, was to add a lot of length to it. The second was actually to take out all the darts in the pattern. So if you watched my other two vlogs about the vest, they had some darts both in the front and in the back of it. I took all those out. The reason being is that the vest looks pretty loose compared to the other two, and because this is going over so many layers at this point, putting darts in just seemed very counterproductive. So I took the darts out, didn't even bother with them. After that, I made a mock-up of the pattern and just to check for the fit, as well as to see how they would lay on top of all the other layers that I was going to be wearing. And from there, I made two more additional modifications. The first was making this little slope effect here. This was not in the original pattern, it was just like kind of a straight down thing. I put the slope in here just so that I can get that going. Another thing I did was of course like cut the layer down, and also I lowered the armhole a bit because when I put it on all of the other layers that I was going to be wearing, I noticed that all the layering actually was making it start to kind of go up like that, and it was starting to cut into the armhole, which I did not want. So I lowered the armhole a bit just to make sure that I could move my arm when I put it all on. So once I got my final pattern drafted up, I transferred it to the real fabric, of course, which the main portion of it was, again, velvet. Specifically, it's micro velvet from Fabric Wholesale Direct. I'm gonna say this, guys, after doing this, I never ever want to work with velvet again. I want to burn all the velvet that I did not use. It was the worst. 0 out of 10 would not recommend it. And from there, I kind of put it back together as per the instructions. That was for the main fabric. Now, I'm gonna get up into the lining because Jesus Christ! Okay, so now we're gonna get into the lining. I'm only gonna show the bottom half of it because that's really where it's the most visible, but let me tell you, it is on the entire vest. So to do this checkerboard diamond harlequin pattern thingy, I used two different fabrics. So the first fabric was this stretch taffeta that I bought from Fabric Wholesale Direct, and the second was this gold dupioni that I bought from Silk Baron. So to get this effect, what I first did was I cut out long horizontal strips out of both fabrics, sewed them together with you know, them alternating each other. Then I cut them vertically, and then sewed them back together, making sure that they were, you know, alternating each other, creating this checkerboard effect. It took me 2 whole yards of each fabric just to get enough to line this entire thing. And even then, I still didn't have enough with the fabric as is. I had to unpick a certain portion of the fabric I did not cut out, sew it back onto a section that I already cut out, just so I had enough fabric to finish this all up. It was the worst. In all honesty though, I do really like how it came out. I did intend on trying to make sure that, I don't know if you can see it here very well, but I did try to make it so that they lined up with each other initially, but I just completely ran out of time to make it look all nice and presentable, so the diamonds don't really match up when you go to the side seams. But that's okay, no one's seeing it anyway. Okay, so now onto the very bottom portion of the lining. So the way I did this is the same stretch taffeta that I used for the checkerboard thing. And to get all these designs to lay how I wanted them to, I actually traced the design onto water-soluble stabilizer, and then I hand-tacked them onto the piece, and then I attach all the designs. So these thicker lines here are just the gold trim that you see everywhere on this costume. These thinner lines are made up of seed beads and bugle beads. These gold circles are the same as the one up here, just in a thinner width. And then these little cross things in the center are seed beads and bugle beads. So I did all of that on this piece of fabric. And then I got rid of the water-soluble stabilizer by basically dunking this into water and let it dissolve. And while I did like how the stabilizer helped me in laying out my design, it did kind of leave a little bit of like, it made it a little bit crunchier, but that's okay, that's okay. It's fine, it's fine. And then after that, I attached this to my lining. Okay, so now we're gonna go to the upper portion of the vest. So, first thing I want to point out are these little shoulder pad thingies. So for the shoulder pads, I created a pattern by actually tracing an actual shoulder pad and then cutting it out of the fabric. So top fabric, of course, is the velvet that you see over this entire thing, and the lining is just the same taffeta that you saw earlier. Now, the next thing I did was that I did these top stitches. So inside here also contains some interfacing as well as an actual shoulder pad as well, just to kind of poof it up and give it some extra shape. Now, the way I did these was, I don't know if you can see it too well on camera, was I basically, on the wrong side of the fabric, which also had the interfacing, I drew out all the lines. These are all in 60-degree angles. And then I top stitch it down with white thread on my machine. And then right at all the points of the diamonds, I sewed a little pearl bead. And I really love this effect on here. I actually was gonna do this whole thing with beads, but again, running out of time, you make do. I then went ahead and attached the piping that you see all over, first by hand with a back stitch and then with a machine. And then I attached the lining and then attached it to the vest. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about are these little epaulettes that you see on both sides. I'm just going to talk about one. So the way I did these was I glued a round sapphire gem to a piece of felt. So after I glued it onto the felt, I then sewed a string of pearl beads around that. And then I cut the felt out, stitched it onto the fabric, and then I added this gold trim around it to hide all the raw edges. You can actually kind of see it popping up on one of these. I don't know if you can see it too well, but it's kind of popping out here. My bad. Okay, so next thing I'll talk about is the collar. So the collar piece, I just kind of drafted up myself because collar pieces are pretty dime a dozen. And then I cut it out and of course, you know, made it using the velvet, the piping, and then also this gold trim that you saw earlier at the hem of my vest as well as on my shoes. So I just added a little more lace there. And then to do all of these gems, so I glued the sapphire gems onto a little, another frame, a smaller frame this time around. And then I attached it onto this piece of taffeta. This is the same taffeta as earlier, as well as doing the same cross design that you see at the bottom. These are again seed beads and bugle beads. Attach them all on here, and then I cover the border using pearl beads. Although I think it turned out really nice, I did notice in some pictures that the collar did look a little bit warped when I kind of moved around. So in hindsight, I probably should have either put more interfacing into this or maybe even put like grosgrain tape. I'm not really sure how I could have like kept this neckline from warping. So if you guys have any ideas, please feel free to tell me in the comments below. So the last section I want to talk about before we go into the cave is all this detailing down the front. So these two trims, they were just store-bought trims. I got I think both of them come from the LA Fashion District. And these were some of the last things that I did when I worked on this costume. So first thing I did was I sewed this white trim down. And at this point, I think I just hand-tacked it because I was in such a hurry at this point. I think this was done when I pulled that all-nighter that I did before ALA. So I tacked the hem down first, and then I attached the other side of it right here. I kind of just did little slip stitches through the lace. And then right over that hem, I did the gold trim as well. I just kind of did like a hand zigzag stitch down that way. Reason why I did this, even though I probably could have just run it through my machine, was because I just didn't want it to be shown in the lining because I didn't know if the judges were going to check there. And then, this was actually the final thing that I did before I left for ALA, was attach these two little thingies right here. So, they're used from the same frames that come on the collar. And then, of course, I just attached a piece of tassels that I already had from other portions of the costume. And these pearl beads are actually just like kind of like a Mardi Gras style necklace. And then I just kind of, you know, played around with the draping to give this nice little effect. And this one actually comes undone, so there's a snap attached to here. And then there is a snap attached to a piece of felt, which is sewn to the back of this piece. So that is how the vest went. Now on to the cape, aka okay, so I apologize in advance. I could not get this to lay out nicely with the backdrop and everything, so we're just gonna go with this. So of course I started with the pattern. This time I just crafted my own cape pattern because, you know, capes are kind of pretty easy to make. And then I cut it out of the main fabric, which was of course the micro velvet and the taffeta. So the first thing I did was attach the piping onto here. I don't know if you can see too well, but there's piping on the edges. Again, hand tacked it down, then machine tacked it down. The next thing I did was do all these white lines. So these are all just like a white trim that I bought on Amazon. I, again, hand tacked it all down first and then tacked it down again by machine. This is why I don't really like working with velvet, is because this fabric is so slippery that if you're working with something that's not velvet, you have to hand tack it first and then do it by machine, which takes so long. Next thing I did, and you can't see too clearly here, is this gold trim here. So again, hand tacked it down, then did it by machine. And then of course I did the tassels as well. Again, hand tack, then machine, and as AQ Weedu calls it, repeat till cry. One thing to note about the tassels though is that to give it extra volume and make it really thick and luxurious, I actually did 2 rows of it. Okay, now on to these detailings. Okay, so now we're gonna go into the part that I'm simultaneously the most proudest of and the one that I want to throw against the wall. So, to get these little lace pieces here, I actually cut it out of a lace fabric that I bought in the LA Fashion District. It was the most expensive fabric that I bought for this entire thing. It was $35 a yard. But it was worth it because, oh my god, pretty! So, to get this to work, I basically just cut pieces out of the fabric. So, the smaller bits were all just little bits that were kind of hanging around the center portions of the fabric. And then this centerpiece was from the hem. So the first thing I did was, of course, I just went ahead and just pinned it all around just to kind of see how things would kind of flow. And then I began tacking them all down using clear sequins. I don't know if you can kind of see it when I kind of move it around here, but these are all tacked down using clear sequences. Sequences. Roxy Andrews, can you tell me what it is? And as you can probably tell, this took forever. Like, so many long nights of just hand tacking these on. I think I went through about 3 packets of sequins just to cover all these up. So yeah, that's how I did that. And then once I finished all of that, everything that I talked about there, I sewed the lining on. And then I attached it at the shoulder piece and at the neckline. By the way, this was all done before I even put together like the majority of this vest together because I wanted to kind of hide the cape edges into the seam. The reason why I say this for last is just because the cape's in the back and I wanted to cover the vest first. Alright guys, so I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you enjoyed the series of me making my Sapphire Gentleman cosplay. Even though there were a lot of headaches when making this costume, in the end I am happy at how it turned out. It really did turn out pretty nice. And hey, it got me an award at ALA, so can't complain too much there. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you have any questions, please feel free to tell me in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you want to see more cosplay content from me. If you want to see me dance, please check out my dance channel. And if you want to support me even more, please feel free to donate to me on Ko-fi. I'll see you guys in my next video. Until then, bye-bye!